Stories from the real world can be far more terrifying than any ghost story or urban legend. And in today's video, we have 3 such stories that are guaranteed to leave you breathless. From a haunted house to a ghostly encounter in the woods. These spine-chilling tales will have you questioning the very nature of reality itself. So hold on tight and prepare to be scared out of your wits. Imagine moving into your dream home, an old Victorian house with character, charm, and history in every corner. But what if that history refused to stay buried? What if, instead of a fresh start, you walked straight into a nightmare? This is the chilling story of the ghost in the house. For years, Daniel, let's call him Daniel, had dreamed of owning a Victorian home. He loved the high ceilings, the grand staircase, the charm that modern homes just couldn't capture. So when he found an old property for sale at a bargain price, he jumped at the chance. Sure, the wallpaper was peeling, the wood was worn, and the place needed some serious fixing up. But for him, it was perfect. He moved in with a toolbox, a few pieces of furniture, and a head full of plans. This was going to be his forever home, but the house had plans of its own. It started small, easy to dismiss. At night, Daniel would hear faint creaks upstairs. Old wood, he told himself. Then doors began closing on their own. Drafts, maybe. The house was old, after all. But then came the whispers. He'd be sitting in the living room late at night, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock, when suddenly he'd hear it. Low murmurs, like a conversation just out of reach, coming from the walls themselves. He even tore off some wallpaper one night, convinced there was a vent or a radio hidden behind it. Nothing, just plaster. The house wasn't settling. It was speaking. Soon, it wasn't just noises. Daniel began to feel watched. No matter what room he was in, it was as if unseen eyes followed him. His pets noticed it too. His cat, usually playful, began hiding in corners, hissing at empty doorways. His dog refused to climb the stairs, staring at the landing as if someone stood there. At night, Daniel would wake up gasping, sure he wasn't alone in his room. Sometimes he'd see a shadow move across the wall. Even though the windows were shut and the curtains drawn, the feeling grew heavier each day. Oppressive. Suffocating. One stormy afternoon, Daniel decided to explore the attic, a place he had avoided until then. The stairs groaned as he climbed up, dust swirling in the air. In the far corner, beneath a moth-eaten tarp, he found an old wooden trunk. Its lock was rusted shut, but with some effort, he managed to pry it open. Inside, he discovered yellowed letters tied with ribbon, brittle photographs, and scraps of a diary. The story they told chilled him to the bone. The house had once belonged to a wealthy woman, a socialite, admired by many, but tormented in private. Her husband had been unfaithful, her social standing crumbling. The letters revealed her descent into despair, and one final note hinted of the unthinkable. She had ended her life in the very bedroom Daniel now slept in. After that discovery, the activity escalated. Doors didn't just shut, they slammed. Objects fell from shelves. One night, Daniel woke to the sound of weeping, soft at first, then rising into heart-wrenching sobs. When he turned on the light, the sound stopped instantly. Another night, as he stood at the bathroom sink, he caught a glimpse in the mirror over his shoulder of a pale woman in a long dress standing just behind him. When he spun around, the room was empty. The whispers grew constant, and the house seemed colder, as though the walls themselves exhaled frost. Finally, unable to bear it, Daniel reached out to a local paranormal investigator, someone who had been studying the house's reputation for years. When the investigator arrived, equipment in hand, he said something Daniel would never forget. "You're not dealing with just one spirit. This house is layered with pain, with tragedy, with death. It's a place that holds on. Over the course of the night, they recorded chilling evidence, soon explained knocks, responding to questions, sudden drops in temperature, and most disturbingly, faint voices captured on tape. When asked, "Who's here with us?" the recorder picked up a whisper. "All of us," as they pieced together the house's history. It became clear the socialite wasn't T, the only one who had died tragically within those walls. Over the decades, the house had been home to fires, illnesses, and even another suspected suicide. Every tragedy had left its mark, and every restless soul had stayed behind. The investigator believed the house itself had become a prisonal place that trapped spirits in endless sorrow. Determined to bring peace, the investigator performed a cleansing ritual. Candles were lit, prayers spoken, and salt laid across the thresholds. For hours, the house groaned and rattled, as if resisting. Shadows seemed to flicker in the corners. At one point, Daniel swore he felt icy hands clutch his shoulders. And then silence. The air lightened, the heaviness lifted. For the first time since moving in, Daniel felt alone, in the best way. Daniel still lives in that Victorian home today. He repainted the walls, polished the wood floors, and restored the staircase to its former beauty. But in the attic, the trunk still sits closed now, untouched. Daniel has no intention of opening it again. And sometimes, on especially quiet nights, when the wind rattles the windows, he swears he can hear the faintest whisper. Not angry this time, not desperate, but thankful. So, what do you think? Was this house truly haunted by restless souls, or was it the weight of its tragic history feeding the imagination? Either way, one thing is certain. Some houses don't just hold memories. They hold on to the people who lived and died within them. Thank you for joining me for this chilling tale of the ghost in the house. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, would you spend a night alone in a house like this? Picture this. You're driving alone on a dark, empty road. The fog is so thick, your headlights barely cut through it. You're miles from the nearest town, radio crackling faintly in the background. And then you see someone on the side of the road, a hitchhiker. Would you stop? Would you let them in? Tonight's story is about one man who decided it became the last decision he would ever make. It was close to midnight when Daniel, let's call him Daniel-less, driving his old Ford pickup down a deserted country road. The road was quiet, lined with endless stretches of trees that seemed to lean in as if they were watching him. The radio played faint static, occasionally picking up fragments of a distant station. Daniel didn't mind the silence. He liked the solitude, the rhythm of the road beneath his tires. But that night, the silence felt heavier, like the world around him was holding its breath. Then, out of nowhere, he saw movement. Through the thick fog ahead, a shadowy figure appeared on the shoulder of the road. A man, standing still, arm out, thumb raised. A hitchhiker. Daniel hesitated. Stopping for strangers at night wasn't something he normally did, but something about the figure alone, in the middle of nowhere, pulled at him. He slowed the truck, rolled to a stop, and leaned across the seat. "You need a ride?" Eka did out. The figure didn't answer, just nodded and opened the passenger door. The man climbed in slowly, quietly. He wore a dark jacket, hood pulled low. His face was hidden in the shadows, and in the brief flicker of the dashboard light, Daniel thought he saw his eyes glint naturally bright, almost reflective. Daniel forced a smile. "Where are you headed?" The hitchhiker's voice came low, raspy, almost like a whisper carried on smoke. "Need to get to the next town." urgent. Something about the way he said it too sharp. Too desperate made Daniel's skin prickle. Still, he pressed the gas and drove on. Minutes passed in silence. Daniel tried to sneak glances at his passenger, but every time he did, the shadows seemed to cling to the man's face, hiding every feature. And then he noticed something strange. No matter how fast they drove, no matter how the truck bounced along the road, the hitchhiker sat perfectly still, not swaying, not shifting. Like he wasn't really there. Daniel gripped the wheel tighter. His mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak. "So, what's in town?" The hitchhiker slowly turned his head. His voice scraped out like broken glass. "Someone waiting for me." The air inside the truck grew colder. Each breath, Daniel exhaled, misting faintly in front of him. His fingers trembled on the steering wheel. Then, without warning, the hitchhiker reached out and placed a hand on Daniel's arm. It was ice, cold and naturally cold. The instant their skin touched, a shock ran through Daniel's body, like electricity, like his very soul was being jolted. He gasped, jerking the wheel, nearly sending the truck off the road. When he looked at the hitchhiker, his hood had slipped back just enough for Daniel to see his face. Only, it wasn't a face. It was twisted, hollow, eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Daniel's heart pounded. His instincts screamed at him to slam on the brakes, to get out, to run, but he couldn't move. His body felt paralyzed, locked in place under the weight of that icy grip. The hitchhiker leaned closer, breath hissing in his ear. He shouldn't have stopped. The radio crackled violently, static filling the cab as the truck's lights flickered. The engine sputtered like it was choking on the very air around them. Daniel's mind screamed, but the harder he tried to move, the more trapped he felt. And then just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The cold lifted. The grip was gone. Daniel blinked, gasping for air, and turned to the passenger seat. Empty. The hitchhiker was gone. No door had opened. No sound of footsteps. Just Goni. The only sign he had ever been there was the faint imprint on the foggy window, where someone had pressed a hand against the glass. Daniel sped the rest of the way into town, heart hammering, barely able to breathe. When he finally pulled into the gas station, the attendant took one look at his pale, shaking form and asked, "You all right, buddy?" Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. He just sat there, staring at the empty seat beside him. Later that night, after finally catching his breath, he told the story to a local bartender. The man listened, face grave, and then said, "You're not the first. People around here have been seeing him for years. Some say he's the spirit of a traveler who died on that road decades ago. Others say he's something worse, a demon, looking for souls to take." Daniel never drove that road again. So, what do you think? Was the hitchhiker a restless spirit doomed to wander? Or was it something darker, something hunting? Next time you're driving down a lonely road at night, and you see someone waiting in the fog, will you stop, or will you keep driving, knowing the price someone else already paid? Have you ever gone deep into the woods at night and felt like something was watching you? Tonight's story is about two friends who went on what was supposed to be a peaceful getaway in the forest. But what they found lurking among the trees was anything but peaceful. This is the ghostly encounter. It started as an ordinary trip to Friendswil. Call them Ryan, and Mark wanted a break from the chaos of city life. So, one weekend, they packed their backpacks, grabbed some snacks, and headed into the wilderness. No phones buzzing, no car horns, no endless chatter, just the smell of pine, the sound of birdsong, and the crunch of leaves beneath their boots. At first, the forest felt alive in the best way possible. The kind of place that makes you breathe deeper, like the air itself is cleaner. They laughed, joked, and wandered without really keeping track of time. But the further they walked, the quieter it seemed to get. The birds weren't singing as much. The breeze felt heavier. And yet, they didn't notice. Not at first. After hours of walking, they finally stopped for a break. Ryan dropped onto a fallen log, taking a swig from his water bottle, while Mark tossed a pinnacone at him with a grin. "Bet you can't tell a scarier story than me," Mark said, and that's when it began. One after another, they tried to outdo each other. Ghosts in old houses, monsters in the dark, urban legends they swore were true. Their laughter echoed through the trees, but with each tale, the atmosphere shifted like the forest itself was listening. Ryan was mid-story, describing a woman in white who haunted lonely roads, when he suddenly stopped. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Mark frowned. "Hear what?" But Ryan's face had gone pale. That's when they saw it. Behind one of the trees, maybe 20 feet away, a shape was watching them. At first, it just looked like a shadow, a trick of the fading light. But then its eyes, two glowing embers, burning faintly in the gloom. Mark froze. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. They just stared. And then, the thing stepped out. It was tall, gaunt. Its body looked wrong, like it was stretched too thin, skin pulled tight over its bones. Every step it took was deliberate, silent, predatory. And that face god, hollow cheeks, lips cracked and dry, like it hadn't smiled in centuries. But it was the eyes that did it. Black, endless. Looking into them felt like falling into a pit with no bottom. A pit filled with despair. Mark whispered, "What the hell is that?" But Ryan couldn't answer. He was shaking, his mouth open, but no sound came out. The air around them turned icy cold, the kind of cold that burns your lungs with every breath. They wanted to run. Every part of their body screamed at them to get up and bolt. But they couldn't move. It was like the creature had routed them to the spot. Its presence was paralyzing, suffocating. And then it raised its hand. Fingers long, thin, almost skeletal, reaching out toward them. Ryan swore later that he felt the air shift around him, like invisible threads were pulling him forward. Just when it was close enough to touch, it vanished. Gone. No sound, no movement, no trace. The forest was silent again. Only their ragged breathing filled the air. Mark jumped up, spinning around, scanning the trees. Where the hell did it go? But there was nothing. Just the same trees, the same shadows, as if nothing had ever been there at all. They didn't stick around to find out. Grabbing their bags, they ran. Branches tore at their clothes. Roots snagged their boots. But they didn't stop. They didn't even look back. By the time they stumbled out of the woods, gasping and drenched in sweat, the sun had fully set. They swore to each other they'd never go back. And the strangest part, when they told people in the nearby town what had happened, no one laughed. No one rolled their eyes. Instead, one old man looked at them, grim and knowing, and said, "You're lucky. Most people who see it don't come back at all." So, what do you think Ryan and Mark saw that day? Was it a restless spirit? A creature born from the forest itself? Or maybe just a trick of exhaustion and fear? Whatever it was, they'll never forget it. And maybe, the next time you're walking in the woods, laughing with a friend, you'll feel it too. That sense that something is out there, watching, waiting.
Like and subscribe.